Hey gang, it's Friday, January 3rd, and what time we got here? It's about 8:30 in the evening. I was playing around in the garage. Last couple of days, kind of killing some time messing around with my air conditioning gauges, kind of tuning them up. The other day I put O-rings in these so that they seal good, or seal well, I guess I should say. So these are in good shape. So what I've been doing the last couple of days is I made up this assembly. I'll take it off so you can see it. So it can be installed on either end of the hose, but it seems to fit well here. So for now. So what this does is it's got the 1/2" Acme thread fitting that I pillaged off of another device. It was one of those hose kits that you buy that you clip right onto the low side fitting. So I just cut this hose off, and this is the end that would screw on the Cannet valve, which is this guy. Okay, so what I did is I made the little tube that goes inside this thing, so it's flat on the top where that rubber seal presses up against, and it's just a little length of tube. I just made it out of a piece of solid. This was a brass fitting that I bored out, then I soldered that into the brass fitting. It was a little bit of a trick to make sure that this didn't get soldered. So that gave me an 1/8" pipe adapter to 1/2" pipe swivel, 1/2" Acme thread swivel. And this is just a regular 1/8" pipe female T. On this side, I turned down the 4 squares into a round little nub. This piece is an old one of these. Okay, not quite as nice as this one. Actually, I've had 2 of these in my lifetime, and I've cut the end off in the past to use that fitting to make adapters like this one. So this is a 1/4 inch SAE flare nut, and I machined the tip of this to fit up in there. Probably bored the end of this thing out too, I don't remember. Yeah, I think so. So this gave me an adapter to go from SAE to Acme. So it would fit on, you know, regular air conditioning thread, right, to the R134 type. And what I used this for was on my vacuum pump. Since all the air is going out, I didn't care about the concern of mixing Freon types and oil types and all that good stuff. So I had 2 of these. One from each one of these valves. This valve and that valve. And I've had them for years. I bet you it's been 10 years. Okay. So just a moment ago, I disassembled the other one of these. Let's see, where is the... I think it fell on the floor over here because it was hot. Here it is. Okay, that looked familiar. It's just a regular nut with the extended, whatever you call that. All right, so I'll go into this a little bit further, what's going on here. So I've got the 1/2" Acme swivel here and a male here, so this goes in line. And on this side I've got the valve, and here this is 1/4 inch SAE that you'd be familiar with. And I took that fitting out of this old gauge set that I don't use anymore. This is the first, man, this is old. That's the reason why I still have this, is because I'm sentimentally attached to the darn thing. I bought this in my 20s, my early 20s. So this is like 40 years old, and it's still fine. It works great. I replaced that with that nice Yellow Jacket brand one, because this handles the higher pressure on the gauges for 410 Freon. It goes up to, what is that, 800 psi on the high side, and it has 4 valves. You got your tank, your high, your low, and then it's got the other valve for your suction, your vacuum pump, which is really, really convenient. So you can have your vacuum pump and your tank all connected, purge your lines, vacuum it out, go from vacuum to adding the Freon lickety split. So this set didn't have that feature. This is my R134 set. Doesn't have the 4th valve for the vacuum pump. So that's what I made. So what we do is we can use this either right here at the gauge set. Normally you hang this from the hood latch or something. And you can have this right here. And then your, this is just the storage port right here in the bleed. I'm going to drop that. Okay, so you got this little button that you could push with your finger to purge out air when you connect the lines. But this is this got a low battery. This is the port where the refrigerant comes from the tank. So you can add this here, or, which is probably more convenient, is you could put this at the end of the hose. Screw this onto the tank, and then screw the hose onto here. And since that's going to be sitting on the ground, now you can use a regular SAE R12 type hose to connect this to my vacuum pump. This is the normal fitting on the end of the vacuum pump. So now I don't need the adapter that I showed you a little while ago. All right, so that's that. And I'll show you this one last thing that I made a while back for injecting the dye. This is a cylinder made out of brass, obviously here, and it's got the 14 millimeter, what is it, like 125 or whatever it is, or 1 thread, and this just, I keep this hand tight. Well, I need a wrench on it now. I got flats on this, so when you unscrew this from either end, I think, yeah, it was this end. You can unscrew this, and you can fill this with oil all the way up to the threads. And I worked the math out that the bore, that's 1/4 ounce. So you can put 1/4 ounce, a measured amount of the refrigerant dye, that fluorescent dye, in here. Put this back on, then draw a vacuum, since you've had it open, right? You draw a vacuum on this with the hose facing up, and it won't suck the oil up, it'll just put a vacuum on the hose. Then you add your refrigerant, and it'll inject the refrigerant, the fluorescent dye, right into the system. And as an added measure, I don't know if you guys know this, but if you shut your tank off, the valve on your tank, you can open your low side valve, and you'll read your low side pressure. Your high side pressure, well, it'll read your both pressures with both valves closed. You can open up your low side and nothing will happen. The refrigerant would try to escape from your low side and go back to your tank, but you got your tank shut, right? Then what you can do, you can crack your high pressure knob, and it'll allow refrigerant from the car, the high pressure refrigerant from the car, to flow into your manifold set and out into the low side and work its way here, and you can flush out the remaining dye that you put in there. So just a little show and tell. Oh, and this last thing, this was the other half of the hose from that quick disconnect deal. And I had an old R12 type SAE fitting hose that the hose was completely rotten and useless. So I took the end off, and this is a piece of copper. It's a little coupler for like a 3/8 tubing coupler, if I remember right, 3/8. Let's see. I already put my box full of copper tubing stuff away. Where's that little piece that came off? I don't know where it went. There it is. So this is what it looked like before I cut it. So I shortened it up, and it was just the right size, a little bit of loose side to fit over this hose. And then I chucked it up in my lathe chuck and cranked down on the nut right here to crimp it, and it wouldn't crimp because the copper was in a hardened state. So I took it over to my vise in a work area over there, heated it up till the copper was glowing red, and I dropped it in water, and that anneals copper when you do that, and it made it soft. Then I chucked it up in there, and I was able to easily squeeze it and crimp it down on the hose. Pretty nice, huh? It's a nice little trick using pieces of copper. If you soften it, you can crimp it with a lathe chuck. So, Friday evening fun.